Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope everyone is enjoying their day. Please subscribe and like the video before continuing. The Young and the Restless spoilers. Wednesday, August 6th, Audra's loss, Kyle confesses, Jack's favor. The Young and the Restless spoilers are in for Wednesday, August 6th, 2025. In tomorrow's episode, fans can expect Victor Newman, Eric Braeden, to terminate Audra Charles, Zuleika Silver. Get updates on the latest news about The Young and the Restless, straight to your inbox. We use your personal data for interest-based advertising, as outlined in our privacy notice. What is this? Kyle Abbott, Michael Mueller, confesses to Claire Grace Newman, Haley Aaron. Plus, Nikki Newman, Melody Thomas Scott, turns to Jack Abbott, Peter Bergman, for a favor. Keep reading and let's talk about what is coming up in the CBS soap opera. Make sure to check out our weekly Y&R spoilers, here. Nikki Newman's special request. Let's start off with Nikki, who will be troubled after her fight with Victor. Of course, it centers around how Victor has pushed Claire away in his attempt to show her the truth about Kyle. However, all of his efforts have just led to Claire storming out on the day of Cole Howard's, Eddie Peck, memorial service. This will just have her getting even closer to Kyle, not further apart. Read more, find out what happened on the last episode of GH. What is this? In any case, Nikki will turn to Jack. The blonde will ask her longtime friend for a favor. Jack adores Claire and thinks she's great for Kyle. So, he will probably say yes. The Young and the Restless, Nikki Newman's special request changes everything in Genoa City. Nikki Newman had seen her fair share of drama, love, heartbreak, and danger in Genoa City. But nothing had prepared her for the decision she was about to make. Known for her poise and unwavering loyalty to her family, Nikki had always played the role of matriarch to perfection, despite her own demons. But behind her polished exterior, Nikki had been quietly wrestling with a choice that would soon upend the lives of nearly everyone she cared about. It started with a simple letter delivered to her office at Newman Media, a letter that transported her back decades and forced her to confront a part of her past she thought she'd buried forever. The letter was from a woman named Evelyn Granger, a name Nikki hadn't heard in over 40 years. Once an inseparable friend during Nikki's early days in Genoa City, Evelyn had disappeared without a trace. Now she was dying, and she had one final request, for Nikki to take care of someone. The someone in question was Evelyn's granddaughter, a young woman named Riley Granger, who had just turned 23 and had no other family left. Evelyn claimed that Riley's father was someone from Genoa City's past, someone whose identity was buried beneath scandal and secrecy. Nikki was stunned. Why would Evelyn turn to her? What could she possibly offer this young woman? But the letter was heartfelt, and Nikki's empathy kicked in. She made a choice that would alter not just her life, but also send shockwaves through the Newman family, the Abbotts, and even the Winters clan. Nikki began by investigating Riley. She had to be sure. A few calls and one private investigator later, she discovered that Riley had recently lost her job, was living paycheck to paycheck, and was completely unaware of her connection to Genoa City. Nikki flew to Chicago unannounced and found Riley working in a local art gallery, sketching during her lunch breaks and hustling commissions on the side. There was something about her, resilient yet raw, polished yet guarded. Nikki introduced herself, and though Riley was skeptical at first, her grandmother had warned her that Nikki might show up. Over coffee and conversation, Nikki told Riley about Evelyn, her past, and her dying wish. Riley didn't cry, but her eyes softened, and Nikki saw herself in the young woman, fierce, vulnerable, determined. Riley agreed to come to Genoa City, just for a visit, she said. But fate had other plans. When Riley arrived at the Newman ranch, Victor was instantly suspicious. "Why is this young woman here?" he asked Nikki in private. But Nikki stood her ground. "Because someone gave me a second chance once, and now I'm giving her one." Still, Victor knew better than to underestimate the significance of Nikki's instincts. He agreed to let Riley stay temporarily, but made it clear she would be watched closely. Victoria was intrigued by the newcomer, especially when Nikki requested that Riley be given a junior creative consultant role at Newman Media. It raised eyebrows throughout the company, especially with Audra Charles, who viewed Riley as yet another threat to her power. But Nikki made the appointment official. "She has potential," she told Audra coolly. "Don't underestimate her." Meanwhile, whispers began to circulate. Who exactly was Riley's father? Evelyn had hinted at a former Genoa City resident, someone deeply connected to the past. Nikki kept the secret close, but Phyllis, ever the detective when it came to scandal, began her own search. She confronted Nikki during a tense lunch at Society. "You're hiding something. That girl's no charity case. She's connected to someone big." Nikki didn't flinch. "When the time is right, the truth will come out," she replied. And it would. Because the truth, once uncovered, would rock several families to their core. The bombshell dropped during a gala hosted by Newman Enterprises to celebrate the launch of a new AI initiative. With the who's who of Genoa City in attendance, Victor, Jack, Devon, Lily, Diane, and more, Nikki took to the stage. But instead of giving the expected corporate speech, she addressed the crowd with a personal announcement. "I have welcomed someone into our family recently. Her name is Riley Granger. She is the granddaughter of a dear friend who has passed. But more than that, Riley's father is someone we all knew. Someone whose past choices changed lives." The room fell silent. "Riley Granger is the daughter of Tucker McCall." Gasps erupted around the room. Tucker, who was standing near Devon, looked utterly blindsided. "That's not possible," he muttered. But Nikki continued. "I've seen the documents. Evelyn told me the truth before she passed. Tucker and Evelyn had a brief relationship before he ever came to Genoa City. He never knew she was pregnant. The fallout was instant. Devon was furious that Tucker had another child he never knew about. Ashley looked betrayed and humiliated. And Tucker himself demanded a private meeting with Nikki. "You should have come to me first," he hissed. "I needed to be sure," she responded calmly. "Now you are." But it wasn't just Tucker who had a hard time. Riley didn't want anything to do with him. "He's not my family," she told Nikki. "You are." But Nikki gently encouraged her to give Tucker a chance. "If not for him, you wouldn't exist. That matters." Riley reluctantly agreed to meet Tucker for lunch. Their first meeting was tense but honest. Tucker, for all his faults, was shaken by the truth. "I never knew." "I'm sorry," he told her. Riley responded with guarded civility. "I'm not here for a father. I'm here because your absence made me stronger." The word stung, but Tucker respected her strength. Back at Newman Media, Riley's presence continued to ruffle feathers. Audra tried to dig up dirt on her, only to be caught red-handed by Victoria, who promptly reminded her who really held power. "If Nikki backs Riley, you'd better learn to play nice," she warned. But Audra wasn't the only one concerned. Nate Hastings, now back in the corporate fold, questioned whether Riley was being groomed for something bigger. Is she just here to honor a friend's request, or does Nikki have plans for her? Devon shared similar concerns, especially as Riley and Lily grew close over shared artistic passions. As Riley's roots deepened in Genoa City, so did her impact. She began mentoring youth at the community center, launching a gallery event for at-risk teens, and even helped Faith Newman with a scholarship application. Nikki watched with pride as Riley proved herself, not as someone's daughter, but as her own woman. But the past wasn't done with her yet. One day, Riley received an anonymous letter claiming Evelyn had lied, that her real father wasn't Tucker, but someone else entirely. The envelope contained a strand of hair, an old photo of Evelyn with a mysterious man, and a cryptic message, "The truth is still hiding." Riley brought it to Nikki, whose face turned pale at the sight of the photo. "That's Cole Howard," she whispered. Another wave of shock was coming. Nikki ordered a DNA test, unsure what to believe anymore. When the results came back, the truth was undeniable. Riley wasn't Tucker's daughter. She was Cole's. Which meant Riley was related to Victoria's long-lost past. The implications were enormous. Victoria had once had a child with Cole, a baby they thought had died. Could Riley be a sister to that child? Could Evelyn have been protecting Riley from more than just abandonment, perhaps from the Newmans themselves? As the dust settled, Nikki called a meeting with Cole, who had recently returned to Genoa City for a limited engagement project with Victoria. He stared at the DNA report in stunned silence. "I didn't know. Evelyn never told me." Nikki understood his pain. She did what she thought was best. But now Riley needs answers. The truth was revealed to Riley, who was once again reeling from another identity shift. Cole stepped up this time. "I don't know how to be a father. But I'd like to try, if you'll let me." Riley didn't respond right away. But she agreed to get to know him. In the months that followed, Genoa City adjusted to Riley's presence. Victor began to warm to her after witnessing her kindness to Nikki, especially during a brief MS relapse scare that left Nikki hospitalized for a week. Riley was at her side every day. "You're strong because you choose to be," she told Nikki. "You taught me that." Ultimately, Nikki's special request had created a ripple effect far larger than anyone anticipated. Her act of compassion had introduced a new family member, shaken old alliances, and unearthed truths that had been buried for decades. Riley Granger may have arrived in Genoa City as a stranger, but she wasn't going anywhere. And as Nikki sat at the ranch one quiet evening, sipping tea with Riley beside her and the family gathering in the next room, she knew she'd made the right choice. Her special request had not only honored a friend, it had brought her closer to understanding her own strength, her legacy, and the power of welcoming someone new into the fold. Genoa City would never be the same again. And that, Nikki thought with a soft smile, was exactly the point. Kyle Abbott confesses. Now that Claire has decided to move in with Kyle after the fight with Victor, there is something she needs to know. Kyle can't risk Claire finding out from someone else, especially Audra. So, Kyle confesses what happened in Nice. Of course, Kyle will play it off like he knew what Audra was up to the entire time and he was the one actually playing her. It seems that Claire will believe him for now. Later, Claire faces off with Audra, the young and the restless. Kyle Abbott confesses, the shocking truth that changes everything. In Genoa City, secrets are currency, and Kyle Abbott just cashed in the biggest one of his life. For months, Kyle had walked around with the weight of guilt and turmoil pressing on his chest, pretending that everything was fine, that his recent choices hadn't fractured his identity and threatened his family's reputation. But lies have a way of surfacing, especially when love, betrayal, and legacy are at stake. When Kyle finally confessed, the ground beneath the Abbott family shook, because the truth was far more devastating than anyone could have imagined. It began with a slip. A heated argument with Jack in the Jabot boardroom over business decisions turned personal. Kyle had been deflecting, criticizing Diane's role in the company, accusing his father of being blind. Jack, ever the stern patriarch, had finally snapped. "What is this really about, Kyle? Because this isn't about Jabot. You've been spiraling for weeks." Kyle had tried to brush it off, but Jack's eyes narrowed. "Tell me the truth." There was a long pause before Kyle muttered, "You don't want to know the truth." But Jack pushed. And that's when it all began to unravel. Kyle took a deep breath and whispered something that made Jack's face pale. "I've been seeing Audra again. It didn't stop. Not after the London incident. Not after you and Diane warned me. Jack slammed his hand on the desk. You told me it was over. You swore. Kyle looked down. I lied. But the affair wasn't the confession that would shake Genoa City. That was just the beginning. Kyle's real secret went deeper, something he hadn't even told Audra. He had uncovered a hidden Jabot financial account, linked to suspicious overseas transactions, and followed the digital trail to a shocking discovery: someone within the company had been laundering money. And when he traced the activity back far enough, the name attached to the shell company wasn't a stranger. It was Kimo Volian Abbott Nguyen. Jack was stunned. That's impossible. Kimo's dead. We buried that chapter. Kyle nodded. That's what I thought too. But the records are too specific. He didn't die. At least not like we were told. And if he's alive, then someone orchestrated that lie, maybe even paid him to disappear. Kyle explained that he had hired a cybersecurity firm in secret. They traced encrypted messages between the account and an IP address in Singapore. The tone of the messages was cryptic but personal, one even mentioned Diane by name. Jack felt like he was caught in a nightmare. So you think Kimo is alive, running a shell company, and moving Jabot funds around the world? Why? For what purpose? Kyle didn't have all the answers, but what he had discovered was enough to justify concern. But the real bombshell came next. Dad. I met him. I went to Singapore 3 weeks ago. I met Kimo. He's alive. Jack fell into his chair like the air had been sucked from the room. What are you saying? Kyle nodded slowly. I wasn't planning to tell you. I didn't know how. He looks different, lives under the name K. Nguyen, but it's him. And he hates you. Jack was speechless. Kyle continued, explaining that Kimo blamed Jack for everything: the abandonment, the years lost, the pain of being treated like a secret. He said you never really wanted him. That everything you've built was built without him. Kyle's voice cracked. Anne. I think he wants revenge. Financially. Personally. Maybe more. Jack was overwhelmed. Not only was his presumed dead son alive, but that son was actively undermining the family company. The Abbott legacy was under attack, and Kyle had kept it secret for nearly a month. Kyle had intended to handle it on his own, perhaps make amends with Kimo or even negotiate a settlement to keep things quiet. But the emotional toll had been too much. The pressure, the deception, the fear, it had finally broken him. I'm sorry, Dad. I thought I was protecting you. I thought I could fix it. Jack, though devastated, knew this wasn't just about Kyle's betrayal. This was a decades-old wound reopened and bleeding. We have to find him. Together. We can't let this destroy everything. The next few days were chaotic. Jack informed Tracy and Billy, who both reacted with shock and disbelief. Ashley, away in Paris, was looped in via a tense video call. The Abbotts had to come together, not just to save Jabot, but to confront the ghosts of their past. Jack arranged for a discreet trip to Singapore with Kyle, determined to face his estranged son and uncover the truth. Meanwhile, Diane had her own reaction when Kyle confessed everything to her. Her face went pale at the mention of Kimo. There are things about Kimo I never told you, she admitted. Things Jack doesn't even know. Kyle leaned forward. Like what? Diane hesitated. I met Kimo, years ago. Before he supposedly died. He approached me in LA. He said he didn't want anything to do with Jack, but he wanted me to pass a message along. I never did. Kyle was stunned. Why not? Diane looked down. Because I didn't want to be the reason that tore your family apart. I thought. I was protecting everyone. The truth about Kimo's survival wasn't the only secret Diane had buried. She had received payments from an anonymous source after her resurrection in L.A., payments she assumed were from Tucker or someone aligned with Ashland Locke. But now, she feared they came from Chemo. The pieces were coming together, and what they revealed was far darker than anyone imagined. Back in Genoa City, the news began to leak. Audra discovered the truth through a hacked message Kyle had foolishly left on his encrypted laptop. She confronted Kyle in a private suite at the athletic club, furious that he'd withheld such explosive information. "You let me walk into that boardroom like a pawn," she hissed. "Do you have any idea what kind of chaos we could unleash with this?" Kyle begged her to stay quiet, but Audra, always calculating, made a call of her own, to Nate Hastings. Nate, who had been working to secure a stronger business position, saw the opportunity immediately. If Chemo was truly alive and financially entangled with Jabot, then Nate could leverage the situation to destabilize the Abbotts, and potentially acquire shares for Newman Media. Victoria Newman, upon hearing whispers from Nate, advised caution. "Let Jack Abbott destroy himself. We'll be ready to swoop in once the dust settles." In Singapore, Jack and Kyle tracked down Chemo. The reunion was anything but warm. Chemo was cold, distant, and unimpressed by Jack's attempts at reconciliation. "You built your empire on lies. You abandoned me. Now you want what, an apology? Redemption?" Jack tried to explain his side, the pain he felt, the grief, but Chemo had spent too many years alone. "You're not my father. Not anymore." Still, Jack wasn't willing to give up. "Then come back to Genoa City and tell the world the truth. If you want justice, don't hide behind shell companies. Face your past." Surprisingly, Chemo agreed, but on one condition. "I want full control of the Abbott Foundation. I want to turn it into something meaningful. Not a vanity project." Jack hesitated, but agreed, hoping the gesture would begin to heal the rift. When they returned to Genoa City, the media frenzy was instant. News of Chemo's survival spread like wildfire. The Abbotts were in crisis PR mode. Reporters hounded Jack. Investors panicked. Jabot's stock dipped. But Kyle's public confession at a press conference stunned everyone. "I made mistakes. I tried to fix things in secret. I thought I could protect my family. But my silence only hurt the people I love. I'm sorry." The public responded with a mix of empathy and scrutiny. Kyle's image took a hit, but his vulnerability won some hearts back. More importantly, it was a turning point for him. The burden was no longer his to carry alone. As Chemo stepped back into the spotlight, old tensions flared. He had allies of his own, former enemies of the Abbotts who welcomed his return. But over time, Chemo began to soften. He bonded with Tracy over literature and memories of their mother. He even began to mentor young artists in town. Slowly, he allowed a sliver of connection to grow between him and Jack. Kyle, meanwhile, began rebuilding. He recommitted to Harrison, seeking to repair his relationship with Summer, who had been devastated by the affair and secrecy. Though reconciliation would take time, Kyle's honesty was the first step. And Nikki Newman, watching from afar, remarked to Victor, "Sometimes, the hardest truths are the ones that set us free." In the end, Kyle's confession may have shattered illusions, but it also built the foundation for a stronger, more honest future. The Abbott family, now larger and more complicated than ever, was learning to face its past without fear. And Kyle, for the first time in years, felt like he could finally breathe. Audra Charles's loss. The Young and the Restless spoilers for Wednesday, August 6 reveal that Audra will face a loss. Despite her insistence that everything is going according to plan, Victor cancels their deal. Claire has walked out the door and the plan failed, so Victor has no more use for Audra right now. How long until Nate Hastings, Sean Dominic, finds out about her little seduction scheme? The Young and the Restless, Audra Charles's loss, ambition, love, and the price she paid. In a city like Genoa, where every smile is layered with motive and every handshake could be the beginning of betrayal, Audra Charles had climbed her way up from the shadows. Intelligent, unapologetically ambitious, and dangerously charming, she knew how to manipulate power and people in equal measure. She wasn't born into wealth or influence like many in the Newman, Abbott, or Chancellor families, but she had grit, and grit had carried her far. She had built her reputation on her sharp mind, corporate instincts, and a capacity to endure pain without blinking. But in the end, even the most hardened players have something to lose. And Audra Charles was about to lose everything. It started with a miscalculation, a rare one. After months of playing both sides between Newman Media and Chancellor Winters, Audra thought she had it all figured out. She had leveraged her relationship with Nate Hastings, seduced Kyle Abbott into trusting her, and even built a tentative alliance with Tucker McCall. Her strategy was clear: ride the wave of corporate volatility and end up on top. She wanted her own empire, her own name on the door, not just someone else's executive puppet. But when you're juggling so many secrets, all it takes is one loose thread for everything to unravel. The thread came in the form of a simple internal audit, routine, unthreatening, or so it seemed. Nikki Newman had initiated a quiet check on all media holdings after sensing inconsistencies in the budget reports. While Nikki's health had improved and her leadership had stabilized, her instincts remained razor-sharp. She instructed an independent team to dig deeper. And what they found would ignite a firestorm that scorched everything in Audra's path. Hidden deep in the financial ledgers were irregularities, funds being diverted from a shell account linked to Newman Media and funneled into an offshore firm based in the Cayman Islands. The signatory on the account? Audra Charles. The paper trail wasn't obvious, but it was damning. Nikki confronted Audra in her office with a file in hand and fire in her eyes. "Tell me it's not true," she demanded. Audra remained silent for a beat, then folded her arms and responded coldly, "You're smarter than that, Nikki. If you've made it this far, then you already know the answer." It was the confession Nikki needed, enough to bring Victoria and Victor into the conversation. While Victoria had admired Audra's drive and ruthlessness, loyalty trumped admiration. Victor, however, had always distrusted her. "I told you she was dangerous," he growled. "And now she's made a fool out of Newman." Audra was terminated immediately, escorted out of the building by security. The press caught wind of the scandal within hours, splashing her name across headlines with phrases like embezzlement, corporate betrayal, and fall from grace. But losing her position wasn't the most painful part, it was losing her carefully constructed network of allies. Nate Hastings, once her partner in ambition and passion, refused to answer her calls. He had taken the fall once for Audra's manipulations and wouldn't do it again. "You burned too many bridges," he told her in a cold message. "And I'm not about to drown with you." Kyle Abbott, with whom she had shared not just a bed but a twisted, fragile emotional connection, was equally unforgiving. After recently rekindling some semblance of civility with Summer and finally beginning to repair his family ties, Kyle could not afford another scandal. When Audra showed up at his suite at the athletic club late one night, hoping for comfort or even closure, he didn't let her in. "You used me," he said from behind the door. "And I let you. That's on me. But it's over now." Alone, disgraced, and cornered, Audra retreated to the only place that still welcomed her, an old apartment in Chicago she had kept in her name under an alias. It was the apartment she once lived in during law school, back before the power games, the boardroom battles, and the expensive clothes. It was quiet there. Too quiet. And with no business to command, no partner to manipulate, no plan to execute, Audra Charles finally had to face the person behind the mask. The loss of control broke something inside her. For the first time, Audra wasn't sure who she was without her image, her position, or her advantage. She poured herself into alcohol, isolation, and a string of unread texts she would type and delete before sending. She missed the war. The noise. The chaos. She missed being important. But as the weeks passed, something began to shift. Out of the blue, she received a letter. No return address. Just her name, written in a clean, deliberate hand. Inside was a single sentence: "You don't have to lose everything, you just have to lose what was never real." She stared at it for hours, unsure who sent it. Was it someone trying to help? Or someone mocking her? Either way, it haunted her. The mysterious message was followed by another, this time an email, sent anonymously with a link. The link led to a private video, surveillance footage of a meeting between Tucker McCall and a shadowy figure associated with a foreign investor. The audio was poor, but Tucker's voice was clear: "Audra is the perfect fall girl. Smart, ambitious, arrogant. She'll think it's her idea." The betrayal hit like a truck. Tucker had set her up. The Cayman accounts weren't solely her doing, she'd been led into a trap, unknowingly complicit in a broader scheme to drain Newman Media of assets before a secret merger deal with an international tech firm. Tucker had used her ambition against her. And she had fallen for it. The realization sparked a fire in her, something raw and familiar. Rage. Revenge. Purpose. She returned to Genoa City under the radar, seeking only one ally, Phyllis Summers. They weren't friends. Far from it. But Phyllis hated Tucker just enough to listen. And when Audra showed her the footage, Phyllis smiled. "Oh honey," she said, "you've got gold. Now let's burn him." Together, they crafted a plan. Phyllis provided access to the people and platforms Audra no longer had, and Audra provided the fuel. The two women leaked the video to a select group of international journalists, timing it with the announcement of Tucker's new venture with a Russian investor, an announcement that instantly fell apart once the footage went viral. Within days, the deal collapsed, investors pulled out, and the SEC opened an investigation. Tucker denied everything, blaming Audra, claiming the video was doctored. But the damage was done. And behind the scenes, Phyllis and Audra watched with satisfaction. But the takedown came at a price. Phyllis insisted she wanted no part of any corporate return. Audra, however, was still craving redemption. Or maybe revenge. When the dust settled, she approached Chancellor Winters, not to beg for a job, but to offer insight on international mergers and digital content expansion. Devon and Lily hesitated at first. Devon still saw her as a liability. But Lily, recognizing the sharpness beneath the scandal, agreed to a temporary consulting contract. One shot, she. Audra took the offer, not out of desperation, but because she had learned something during her fall: control means nothing if you have no foundation. This time, she would build her career again, but slower, smarter, with more armor and fewer masks. Still, the scars remained. She had lost her job, her allies, her reputation, and for a time, her sense of self. But she had also lost something more personal, something she never admitted out loud: the possibility of love. Despite all the manipulation and power games, a part of her had wanted Kyle. Not for the name, not for the leverage, but for the boy beneath the ambition. And that boy was gone. One afternoon, she saw him at society with Summer and Harrison. They looked happy. Normal. She didn't interrupt. She just watched. And for the first time, Audra Charles felt the weight of real loss, the kind no career rebound could fix. But she also knew this wasn't the end. If Genoa City had taught her anything, it was that no one stayed down for long. And while she had lost much, she still had her mind, her resilience, and now, thanks to Tucker, her vengeance. The next chapter of her story wouldn't be defined by betrayal. It would be defined by reinvention. Because Audra Charles didn't disappear. She adapted. And the next time she walked into a boardroom, it wouldn't be as someone's assistant, someone's lover, or someone's scapegoat. It would be as someone to fear. Someone rebuilt. Someone who'd already lost it all, and survived. Victoria Newman torn. Over with Victoria Newman, Amelia Heinley, she took Claire's side when it came to Victor. However, she has always been her father's favorite child as well. Victoria often gets divided between her father and someone else. What is this? However, this time it's not a man or a friend, but her daughter. This could force Victoria to make some bold moves to keep the peace in the family. Which storyline are you looking forward to seeing the most on Wednesday, August 6th? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. The Young and the Restless, Victoria Newman torn, between family, power, and forbidden love. Victoria Newman had always been defined by strength. As Victor Newman's firstborn, she inherited his grit, his business sense, and his unwillingness to back down. But she also inherited his loneliness, the quiet cost of always leading, always dominating, always sacrificing. For decades, Victoria had moved like a queen across Genoa City's boardrooms, her high heels echoing power down the corridors of Newman Enterprises. But when power collides with emotion, even queens fall. And now, Victoria Newman found herself torn in ways she never imagined, between family, between ambition, and between a love that could ruin everything. It all began with the unexpected return of Cole Howard. His presence in Genoa City stirred something in Victoria that had long gone dormant. A gentle ache. A question of, what if? For years, Cole had stayed away, building a quiet life on the West Coast, distancing himself from the tangled mess of Newman family history. But when he returned for a literary collaboration with the university, and subsequently became involved in Riley Granger's mysterious arrival, the past came flooding back. Victoria tried to keep it professional, especially since her plate was full with Newman Media's restructuring, Nikki's recent health issues, and Audra's stunning fall from grace. But her heart didn't listen. And neither did Cole's. One evening, after a tense board meeting, Victoria found herself alone at Crimson Lights. Cole arrived, as if summoned by the same emotional current. They talked for hours, laughing about the old days, remembering their short-lived marriage, their lost child, and how much they had both changed. One cup of coffee turned into two, and then a walk around Chancellor Park. Then, silence. Then, a kiss. It should have ended there. A moment of nostalgia. But it didn't. They began meeting in secret. Hotel rooms. Country drives. Dinners at private clubs under fake names. Cole saw the woman Victoria had become, more than just a Newman, more than just an executive. He saw her pain. Her fatigue. Her need to be understood without agenda. And Victoria, for the first time in years, felt seen. But love didn't exist in a vacuum. Especially not in Genoa City. When Victor found out Cole had returned, his reaction was swift and brutal. He called Victoria into his office and warned her to stay away from the man. He's a relic from the past. A distraction. He has no place in your future, Victor growled. Victoria stood her ground. You don't get to decide who I love, she said. Victor's glare turned cold. No, but I can decide what kind of Newman you'll be. Torn between her father's expectations and her own fragile rediscovery of happiness, Victoria began to unravel. She became distant at Newman Enterprises, often skipping meetings or letting Nate Hastings handle things she usually micromanaged. Her siblings noticed. Nick grew suspicious. Adam watched with quiet amusement, and even Nikki, though protective, voiced concern. What are you hiding, Victoria? Nikki asked gently one night. Victoria brushed her mother off. But secrets have a way of bubbling to the surface. The real catalyst came in the form of a new business deal, an international energy merger that Victoria had been pushing for months. It was her chance to reshape Newman's future and cement her legacy. But just days before the contract signing, an anonymous leak revealed that Cole Howard was involved with one of the rival firms, a literary and branding consultant for their overseas campaign. The optics were damning. The board panicked. Stockholders wanted answers. Was Victoria compromised? Was she feeding confidential strategy to her lover? Victor wasted no time. "You're suspended," he declared during an emergency board meeting. "Until this is investigated, you're not fit to lead." The room fell silent. Victoria stared at her father, her face a mixture of betrayal and disbelief. "You've wanted me gone since the day I stopped being your puppet," she whispered. Victor didn't deny it. "I want someone who puts family first. Not someone chasing ghosts." Stripped of her title, Victoria retreated to the ranch. Cole followed her there, begging her to run away with him. "We could go back to California. Start over. No pressure. No empires to manage." Victoria almost said yes. Almost. But something stopped her. That night, she walked the length of the Newman stables, the place where she'd once dreamed of fairy tales, before billion-dollar deals and corporate wars. And she thought of her daughter, Katie. Of Johnny. Of what kind of legacy she wanted to leave behind. She realized then that no man, not even Cole, could define her future. Only she could. The next morning, Victoria returned to Newman Tower, not to plead for her job, but to speak her truth. She called a press conference, inviting media from across the city. Standing tall, she addressed the rumors. "Yes, I was involved with Cole Howard. And yes, I withheld that relationship from the board. That was a mistake. But I did not leak any company secrets. I did not breach any contract. And I did not sacrifice my integrity. I am a woman who made a personal choice, and I will not be shamed for it." The boldness of her statement shifted public opinion. Fans praised her for honesty. Investors admired her candor. And slowly, the tide began to turn. Meanwhile, Cole, watching from the sidelines, realized he had become the very thing he hated, a complication in Victoria's life. He decided to leave again. But this time, he wrote her a letter. "You are stronger than anyone I've ever known. If loving me costs you your kingdom, then I won't be part of the price. I love you too much for that." Victoria read the letter and cried, not because he left, but because for the first time, she truly felt free. In the weeks that followed, Victoria returned to Newman in a new capacity, not CEO, but executive chair. She let Nate run operations, trusting him, while she focused on strategic partnerships. She began mentoring Riley Granger, seeing in the young woman the same fire she once had. And when Victor tried to rein her back in, she simply said, "You taught me how to fight. But I decide when and for whom I fight." Victoria's journey from power to vulnerability and back again was nothing short of revolutionary. She had lost love, clashed with family, and faced public humiliation. But she emerged more self-aware, more balanced, and more human than ever. Because sometimes being torn apart is the only way to come back whole.